Okay, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Good morning, everyone. Honorable lecture, Madam Nettie Agustin Tanri, SPD, MPD, and all of my beloved friends. First of all, let's say thanks to Almighty Allah Subhanahu wa Taala. Because of His blessing, we are able to come here to join in this English meeting. All right, as you can see on the screen here, we are going to talk about why do we assess. But before we go to the explanation, let me introduce my group. Uh, my name is Anika Fasya Saifullah with ID number 2021222018. Also, my friend Anissa Pratiwi with ID number 2021222001. Then Fiara Fiana with ID numbers 2021222031. So Mediawati with ID number 2021222039. And last is Reki Islami Pasha with ID number 2021222012. Okay, before we go to the explanations, here are table of contents that will be presented. The first material is about definition and dimensions of assessment. Second is purposes of assessment. Third is high quality assessment. And the last is beliefs about assessment. So, without further ado, let's begin the presentation with the first explanation about the definition of assessment that will be presented by me. So, certainly, the process of teaching and learning needs to be improved to make the learners understand about teacher explanation. So, therefore, assessment plays an essential role in language teaching and learning. Assessment refers to all those activities undertaken by teachers and by their students in assessing themselves, which provide information to be used as feedback to modify the teaching and learning activities in which they are engaged. It is according to Black and Williams in 1998. So, assessment encompasses a wide range of activities and tasks that teachers use on a regular basis to evaluate student development and improvement. It is the process of identifying learners' needs, documenting their progress, and determining how well teachers and parents are performing or explaining. According to Tyler and Nolan in 2008, assessment activities include events, tools, process, and decisions. Those activities are the fundamental aspects of classroom assessment. So the first is assessment event. Assessment event is when a teacher organizes an oral presentation or a listening activity. It can support students when the events appear with the right frequency so that the teachers knows whether instruction is successful, which areas need more instruction, and which student or group of students may need additional support. Second is assessment tools. Assessment tools can support student learning when the tools give students clear ideas about what is important to learn and the criteria or expectations for good work, and when assessment goals are aligned with instructional goals. Choosing an assessment tool is like choosing a scale to measure our body weight or a tape to measure the size of a desk. We may assess students' ability to communicate by using performance tasks, such as making an oral presentation or writing a report. We may assess our students' ability to read by using multiple choice items on a test or reading comprehension, or by asking them to aloud, uh, read a passage aloud and explain what it means. The tool we use to assess uh, has to fit with both the type of learning that is being measured and the type of learning that is the goal of our instruction. The third is assessment processes. It can support students' views of their teachers as allies in their education. Also, feedback can help students focus on and better understand the requirements of a task. Assessment processes are about how we carry out our assessment activities. We need to remember that the central purpose of assessment is to support student learning. So in one way or another, our assessment has to center on this purpose. And the last is assessment decisions. Can support students' learning when grades accurately reflect what students know and can do. We make a range of decisions based on the result of our assessment. These decisions range from micro-level course decision, such as what we need to do more or less of in a follow-up lesson, to macro-level decision which will have important or even life-changing consequences for our students, such as deciding which class a student should be placed in or whether a student can be admitted into a university. So that's the first material. Now we go to the next material. It is about dimension that will be explained by Hanisa. So Hanisa, and sure.
All right, thank you to the moderator for the opportunity. I'm Hanisa Pratiwi. I would like to present the material about dimension and formative summative assessment. First is dimension. The following two terms best represent this dimension of assessment. The first is assessment for learning refers to the process of seeking and interpreting evidence for use by students and their teachers to decide where students are in their learning process, where they need to go, and how best to get there. And the second is assessment of learning refers to assessment that's happened after learning has occurred to determine whether learning has happened. They are used to make statement about a student's learning status and a particular point in time. So as a teacher, we engage in both dimension of assessment practice. In fact, the synergy of assessment for learning punctuated with the use of assessment of learning is the best way to support our students' learning. There are other ways of defining assessment. For example, is formative assessment and summative assessment. So let's move to the next material. Next slide, please. Next material is formative and summative assessment. The first is formative assessment. According to Blake and William 2009, formative assessment encompasses the following processes. Practice in a classroom is formative to the extent that evidence about student achievement is elicited, interpreted, and used by teacher, learners, or their peers to make decision about the next step in instruction. So, formative assessment is in line with assessment for learning, where assessment processes are carried out collaboratively and the assessment decisions are primarily about the direction in which teaching and learning should go. So, typically, there should not be a mark associated with formative assessment. Sometimes, as an incentive, teacher might award marks for participating in a process or completing a stage of an activity. For example, is participating in a writing conference or leading a group discussion. Next is summative assessment. Summative assessment is a type of course evaluation that happens at the end of training or program. It is the process of assessing the student knowledge, proficiency, and performance by comparing that they know with what they should have learned. Summative assessment is used to evaluate student learning, skill acquisition, and academic achievement at the conclusion of a definite instructional period, typically at the end of project, unit, course, semester, program, or school year. So, summative assessment is in line with assessment of learning. I think enough for me. I'll give it back to moderator.
Okay, thank you to Hanisa who has given the explanation of that one. Yep. So we go to the next material. It is about purposes of assessment that will be explained by Vidya. So Vidya, time is yours.
All right, thank you to the moderator for giving me the opportunity. I'm Widyawati. I would like to explain about purposes of assessment. There are three major purposes of assessment. The first one is assessment for learning. It's an ongoing process that monitors student learning in order to help teachers improve their teaching and students to improve their learning. It continuously informs instruction and helps students manage their own learning. The assessment information is used to determine the next teaching steps and learning steps to continuously improve the teaching learning process. Formative assessment serve the purpose of assessment for learning. For the example is concept maps, progress or monitoring reports, checklists or surveys, interviews, and research proposal. The second one is assessment as learning. Assessment as learning is also an ongoing process that helps students to self-reflect, monitor their own learning, and adjust their learning strategies in order to achieve their goals and become more self-directed, metacognitive, independent, successful learners. Formative assessment also serves the purpose of assessment as learning. For the example, journals, self-assessment, peer assessment, and personal learning logs. And the last purpose is assessment of learning. Assessment of learnings measures what and how well the students have learned at the end of instruction. It certifies learning and measures students' overall achievement or proficiency. It determines whether learning goals and outcomes have been achieved. Summative assessment serve the purpose of assessment of learning. For the example, final performance task, final papers, final oral presentation, long exam, periodical tests, and final exams. According to other sources, assessment can be used for a number of purposes, including to assess student learning, evaluate and improve teaching and learning programs, provide information on student learning and progress in a course in relation to the syllabus outcomes, provide evidence of satisfactory completion of a course, report on the achievement of each student at the end of a course. In the context of the higher school certificate, a requirement of a school-based assessment program is to provide a summative measure of a student's achievement in relation to course outcomes. This includes a wider range of syllabus outcomes than may be measured by external examination alone, Multiple measures and observation made throughout the course rather than a single assessment event. Assessment tasks are conducted throughout Year 11 and Year 12, and each has a weighting determined by the school within requirements provided by NESA. Each formal task enables teachers to collect information about the student's achievement in relation to several outcomes, to award marks in accordance with marking guidelines, and to provide constructive feedback to students on their performance, highlighting their strengths and where they could make improvement. All right, that's enough for me. I give it back to the moderator. Thank you.
Hey, thank you to Vidya for asking material. Now we go to the fourth material. It is about the high quality assessment that will be explained by Via. Via, time is yours.
All right, thank you very much, moderator, for the time and opportunity. So I will continue the presentation about high quality assessment. So high quality assessment practice are those that provide results that verify and promote targeted student learning. According to Chen and Fox in 2017, there are 6 fundamental aspects of high quality assessment practices. The first aspect is alignment. It refers to the degree of agreement among curriculum, instruction, standards, and assessment. Those elements should be in harmony. It means what teacher presents in the classroom must be referred to the curriculum, and so is with assessment. To achieve alignment, it is needed to select appropriate assessment methods which reflect clear and appropriate learning goals. And the second aspect is validity. Validity means that the test should measure what it's supposed to measure. For instance, when teachers teach about reading comprehension, he or she can't give the assessment in the form of speaking test, but it should be in the form of reading test. That way, the assessment's outcome will be able to demonstrate the level of students' reading ability. And validity also means the extent to which inferences made from assessment is appropriate. It means that the assessment's outcome are able to give an overview of students' abilities as well as what action must be taken as the consequence. The next aspect is reliability. Reliability refers to the consistency, stability, and dependability of the assessment results. When a test result today is 75, for instance, but the next day it's 95, it means there is a problem in reliability. And there are several factors that can affect assessment reliability. It can be from the test takers, the raters, the test administration, or the test itself. Next slide, please. All right, the fourth aspect is fairness, and this is achieved when students are given equal opportunities to demonstrate achievement and assessment results in a valid comparable score. This requires transparency and all that students know the learning targets, criteria for success, and on what and how they will be assessed. The next one is consequences. The other term of consequences is washback, and it refers to the influence of testing on teaching and learning. Washback or consequence could be possible or could be positive or negative. And test is valid when it has good washback. For example, it increases students' motivation to learn and makes the teacher try hard to improve the quality of learning. And the last one is practicality and efficiency. Practicality relates to the considerations of cost, time allotment, test administration, human resource, test construction, and test scoring, according to Brown 2004. In other words, a good test should be easy to prepare, use, interpret, and store. I think that's all from me. Thank you very much. I'll give it back to you, the moderator.
Yeah. Okay, thanks to Hannah for explaining the fourth material. Now we go to the last material. It is about beliefs about assessment. That will be explained by Rifki. Rifki, type is yours.
Okay, thanks to moderator. My name is Rifki and I would like to explain beliefs about assessment. What we assess and how we assess, it depends to a large extent on our interconnected system of knowledge, values, and beliefs that inform our action in the classroom. As a teacher, it is important for us to be aware of our own philosophy of assessment, to explore the philosophies of others, and to acknowledge the overlaps and difference between the two. Reflecting on our own teaching philosophy is a useful first step towards building common ground on assessment in our classrooms, program, school, and other language learning contexts. Teaching demands your full attention, and there is rarely time to step back and consider fundamental questions about what we are doing or why. Teachers, individuals, philosophies may align with or differs from the prevailing educational or curricular expectation that set the context within which they teach and assess. In this topic, I will consider four prominent educational philosophies that have been influential in the history of language teaching. From White, 1988, we identified four different educational philosophies which have characterized the mainstream educational agenda during different periods of language teaching history. White discussed the implicit beliefs, value, and assumption that are evident in these four different philosophies of language teaching curriculum. Using White's label, I will define each of the educational philosophies that inform language teaching curriculum. The first one is classical humanism. Classical humanist curriculum values tradition, culture, history, literature, and knowledge about a language. The main curricular goal is to pass on to the most capable student the knowledge, values, literature, and history of a language. The second one is progressivism. A progressive curriculum focuses on the individual learner and defines language teaching activity as learner-centered. Although informed by overall purpose and goals for language learning, progressive curriculums typically requires teacher to define course activity and content in relation to needs analysis or other evidence of student interest, preference, or performance, which set the direction in emphasis and activity of the course. This is for help students to identify with increasing clarity their language skill areas in need of improvement and elaborate strategies which would help students to attain the desired increase in the achievement of those skills. The third one is reconstructionism. A reconstructionist curriculum identifies specific learning outcomes based on overall course purpose and goals. These learning outcomes guide the selection of activity and experience in the course, all of which are designed in relation to the predefined criteria, which identify what students should know and be able to do at the end of the course. And the last one is postmodernism or eclecticism. On this educational philosophy values the spontaneous, unique, unplanned, and emergent learning that takes place each day in a classroom setting. Because we are all unique individuals, every classroom, every interaction between a student and a teacher, the experience of a language activity, and what may be learned from it are also unique. Outcomes will also differ because learners differ. Typically, learners are divided into groups by proficiency levels, interests, and so on. The teacher supports their development on an ongoing basis by identifying whatever activities to provide the next best step in supporting the individual students' learning process. I think that's it from me. I give it back to moderator.
Okay, thank you, Rifki, for explaining the material. Finally, we go to the conclusion. Here are the conclusion for today's material. So, assessment plays an essential role in language teaching and learning. It is helping the process of learning and improvement and development of students. The aims of formative assessment are to evaluate students the process of forming their competencies and skills. The aim is to measure or summarize what the student has grasped. Each formal test enables teachers to collect information about the student's achievement in relation to several outcomes, to award marks in accordance with marking guidelines, and to provide constructive feedback to students on their performance, highlighting their strengths and where they could make improvement. High-quality assessment practices are those that provide results verifying and promoting targeted student learning. Reflecting on our own teaching philosophy is a first step towards building common ground on assessment in classrooms. Okay, so everyone, if there are any question, uh, feel free to ask the question in the meeting later. So, uh, I would like to say thanks to all the presenters who has explained the material today and also the audience. I'm sorry if there are any mistakes, and hopefully the presentation will give the benefit for all of us. Uh, Thank you for your attention. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.